GMOs. What are they? The abbreviation for GMOs is genetically modified organisms. A GMO is an organism whose genome has been altered by the techniques of genetic engineering so that its DNA contains one or more genes that are not normally found there. How are GMOs made? There are 4 steps. Step 1. This is to pick the trait that interests the farmer. So base it off what the farm needs. To look over different types of the same species of plants to help better your need. Step 2. To leave the genetic trait of interest out, so compare the information of the genomes. Step 3. Take the chosen trait and breed it into the new genome. The genetic trait is then cut and pasted into a plasmid by enzymes. The seed accepts DNA-coated metal particles to be inserted. The plasmid is then put into bacteria which will infect the cells. Step 4. The final step is growing the seed. It controls growth, ensures the GMO is replicating, and the growth conditions are determined. Uses of GMOs in agriculture. Using these genetically modified organisms in our industry allows us to produce high yields. This is possible because crops are able to be bred for what the consumers want. Drought-tolerant corn has been bred to help farmers in situations when the weather is tough. They have been breeding apples that will not brown. This simple change will help the consumers and producers. Potatoes. They have also been altered. This helps provide bigger yields, they are less likely to brown, have black spots, and bruise. This alteration will allow for fewer wastes. Importance of increased yields. In today's world, it is very important to produce enough food to feed its growing population. The world's population is expected to rise to over 9 billion people by 2050. With our climate changing drastically, the crops we are used to planting may not be suitable in the future. This allows for the use of genetically modified crops, leading to breed for the desired landscape and the needs of the consumers and producers. Unfortunately, land cannot be made from what does not exist. Yield studies of GMO crops. According to Monsanto, a multinational agrochemical and agricultural biotechnological corporation, yields from a GMO crop have been substantially higher. Germplasm is the basic genetic information in the seed, the influencer on growth and development of the plant, if from germplasm. Genetically modified breeds have doubled the yields over traditional breeding. Having herbicide-tolerant traits allows for higher yields within the crop. Studies show in developing countries where weeds are very prominent and there are not a lot of ways to help diminish them, that GMOs have increased the yields drastically. Monsanto says in Mexico the yields increased with herbicide-tolerant soybeans of 9%. In Romania, the yields increased with herbicide-tolerant soybeans have averaged 31%. Philippines have yield increased of 15% with herbicide-tolerant corn and 24% with insect-resistant corn. In Hawaii, virus-resistant papaya has increased yields by an average of 40%. And in India, insect-resistant cotton has led to increased yields on average of more than 50%. So this data shows that the GMO crops are increasing very well and helping the different countries out that would not have benefited out of the normal seed. Positive effects of GMOs on the environment. Using genetically modified herbicide seed protects the crop from weeds. They kill them off. Without this bred into the seed, it creates for many different costs and environmental challenges. When it is bred in, it allows for less spraying to the land. which can be leached into the waterways and contaminating other surfaces, providing little to no tillage for the crop. This helps improve and maintain the soil quality. It will not be disturbed as bad as tilling it regularly. Tilling requires more tractor time, which then adds to fuel costs. It creates more emissions in the atmosphere, it damages the soil, and water retention capabilities. Here's some data from Monsanto. They state that the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions associated with genetically modified crops in 2006 is estimated to be equal to removing more than 500,000 cars from its road. On average, the volume of herbicide used on corn has dropped 20% since herbicide-tolerant corn was introduced in 1996. Some negative impacts of GMOs on the environment. Genetically modified crops contain a Bt toxin. This toxin is stronger than any other natural toxin, which negatively impacts insects and other organisms. Pollen from these GM crops have contaminating other crops in the same area. This is creating cross-pollination. As weeds get tolerant to the herbicides, weeds then become what is known as a superweed. Once the herbicide use rises, the benefits of the herbicide crop is irrelevant. Here's a concluding video to show all you guys.
Well, GE crops are genetically engineered crops, and this implies that genes are introduced into the genome of a particular crop species for some targeted purpose. And of course, most of these would be beneficial impacts, such as increasing drought resistance or salt tolerance. And in the arena of plant biosecurity, we certainly focus on introducing genes for resistance to pathogens and pests that we're concerned about coming into the country, such as the UG99 strain of wheat stem rust that I mentioned before. The possible risks that some are concerned about are the possibility that genetically engineered crop species could interact with native species and affect the germplasm if an exchange of genes were to occur in nature. And this is not something to brush away. There is a potential for this, and it should be mitigated by environmental testing and using means of introducing the genes that are very stable.
So that's a video just to sum everything up. And here's a works cited page that I've used. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.